Hi folks, figured I'd start the week this week with some hobby nightmares rather than anything else, just to set the tone, I suppose. Because I've gotten in quite a few really good ones over the weekend I've been reading and having a bit of fun with. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. If you like what I do, subscribe. The button is down below to subscribe. And, if you really like what I do, head on over to Composite Games to get any of your modelling stuff, 40k, Age of Sigmar, whatever. Use the promo code Northern Exile down below for 5% off at checkout. So, let's jump in, shall we? Not going to be a super long one. I did say it for a while that I was going to do shorter hobby nightmares, like you do like a 10 to 15 minute video, and then I sort of drifted away from doing that, so I'm going to try and stick to it this time, because people seem to enjoy the shorter format rather than the longer ones, you know. So anyway, moving on. Titanicus says, this is a story of the first official 40k tournament I entered back around 2010. I'd been a casual wargamer, but serious hobbyist and painter, for almost 15 years prior. I was expecting a gentleman's game, quote-unquote, that was a rogue trader event set up by a local indie game store. My first N was a friend of my roommate. My first opponent, N, was... oh wait, that sounded really wrong. My first opponent, N, was a friend of my roommate. Said roommate had brought me to the tournament. Even though we had not met before, there were plans to hang out afterwards, so I had an extra incentive to get along and not get into any conflicts. Fair enough. The game started out okay, with my word bearers Chaos Marines versus N's Craftworld Eldar. But soon, it started to sour. I really hate it when you've been told to behave already. Do you know what I mean? And you know you have to because you're going to ruin the rest of the day. But you just can't let things... It's just such a horrible feeling. And somebody starts misbehaving. I noticed things like my opponent refusing to disclose what units were in what transport. I was pretty sure that this was against the rules, as well as the spirit of the game. It certainly is. It certainly is against the spirit of the game. I seem to remember back in the day, at least in 7th edition, people said similar things to me, like I'm under no obligation to tell you what's in what, like things like that. Which is a really bad way of playing the game and sets a really bad precedent, but hey. But since I was not totally familiar with the edition changes, I let it go. Yeah, if you know whether that was a rule back in the day, for sure, let me know. I always thought it was a hard and fast rule that you had to, but, people have told me differently over the years. Then, it was more a question of attitude. Even though N was winning, he was starting to get borderline aggressive. He didn't say anything over the line, but was just way too intense and hostile for a game of toy soldiers. I started feeling bad about the whole hobby and questioning why I put so much time and effort into the hobby if what was an actual game was going to be like this. That is a horrible feeling. That's a horrible feeling. Oh, dude, I'm so sorry, man. I hate that. I hate that. It's really one of the things that it gets you right in the core, do you know what I mean? You put all this time and effort into a hobby, let's be honest, it's quite time and effort intensive, and it's also money intensive. It's expensive. This is not a cheap hobby that we're in, boys, And to have that taken away from you when you start to think, oh my god, have I wasted my time? If you've ever made somebody do that, you are failing in the hobby. Or even worse, you're failing the hobby. You're failing us as people. Then more shenanigans. While I don't care if a horde army has a few guys moved an extra half an inch or on accident, this was something else. Yeah, I also don't really care about that, If it's a horde army, whatever, I don't care. One ordinary fire dragon was mounted on a plain 40mm base, so when disembarking, more models could get off a melter shot. I didn't follow everything that was happening, but let it go. Whenever N moved his warp spiders, he would start to move them properly, then change his mind and move them in a totally new place without measuring properly. Oh, I've seen that happen on live streams. Wasn't somebody caught cheating doing something similar? Where they would literally move and go, actually, I don't want to move them there, I want to move them here. And without measuring it, and they just move them somewhere else. I swear that was done online pretty recently. He could gain an extra 3 to 4 inches doing this, and my poor Chaos Marines got shredded. Well, if only we could all gain an extra 3 to 4 inches by doing such things, man. You know what I mean? I realised I was having zero fun at this point. It was just a chore going through the motions. Finally, it was the last turn, and I was down to only 2 models. The worst performance of my wargaming career, quote-unquote. One died, and the other made a saving throw or 2 and lived. N could not handle this, even though he had clearly won the game. He started screeching about how lucky I was that I technically had not been tabled. I didn't have a lot to say at this point and just packed up my army. My other 2 games were okay, but the second one, my opponent complained the whole time about his Sisters of Battle being underpowered. N won the local event and took home a large, rather expensive Battleforce-style Marine box. He sold it on eBay, which I found out later was a pattern/business scheme. This was an insult added to injury, for me at least. I just tried to be chill, but I wasn't actually ready to let it go. Over time, I started thinking about his nasty behaviour and questionable tactics. Yeah, I'm wondering what the reception would have been at the drinks later on. Do you know what I mean? Whether you actually brought it up with him or something. But anyway, the situation is weird because since he was friends with my roommate, I actually hung out with this guy, did a terrain commission for him, and even was an ally with him in a 2v2 game. When he didn't cheat that time, but he did get aggressive about arguing over rules. Like saying standing on modelled flat terrain gave cover saves and things like that. Fast forward a few months, and now it is time for the Grand Tournament. At this point, I was totally over N and just thought he was a bit of an arsehole. He was also at the tourney. I was at the Grand Tournament to hang out, but could not afford to enter the event. I did, however, clue in my friend that N was probably a cheater. My friend went over in a semi-finals kind of game to film it. He got it on tape that N was blatantly cheating, using the warp spider movement trick. N was disqualified and banned from that event for a couple of years. Nowadays, I would never let it get that far. The first sign of rude behaviour I can let go, but if I see any kind of pattern of bullying or cheating, I will not tolerate it again. I felt so small and weak to let someone push me around like that and take advantage of my good nature. If it happened again, there would be some words exchanged, or I would simply just stop playing. No game or possible placement in an event is worth being humiliated or cheated. This is why I think Hobby Nightmares is an important part of the channel, because it encourages backbone and high standards. Thank you. P.S. It might blow your mind to hear, but I play Grey Knights and Space Wolves. But I mean, it doesn't really blow my mind, man. I mean, Space Wolves are a cool army. I've never, ever said the Space Wolves are not a cool army in terms of their the idea of what they are. You know, I just don't like the way that they act in the lore, and I don't like their models. But if you could, like, combine them with something... Like, I saw there was another YouTube channel that did the Space Bears, which is very similar. They act in a very similar way, but they're just more aggressive and stoic. If Space Wolves were like that and look like that, like actual pelts and stuff, like, you know, that look like pelts and not just like, you know, cosplay stuff, I would really, really, really get behind them. I probably might even collect a few of them as well. Anyway. Thank you for that, by the way. Will says... hello, Exile of the North. Hello. I've recently discovered your channel and I've been binge watching the Hobby Horror Stories videos. Good lads. I really like your brand of honest, tough love style advice, and I'm hoping you can impart some of that wisdom onto my current situation. Alrighty. I apologise if the story ends up being quite long. Also, feel free to call me by my name. Well, this would be quite a late point to say I can't call you by your name, man, so, you know... Never mind, it still works. For context, I've been in the hobby for over 15 years now. My primary interest is in the building/painting side of the hobby, as my interest in the gaming side is quite minimal. That's not to say I don't enjoy it from time to time, but 95% of the time I'm right at home with clippers or a brush in my hand, instead of dice. As such, until fairly recently, I've played very, very few games, and those I did were extremely casual. Sounds like my kind of hobbyist, to be honest with you, man. I'm very similar. About a year ago, a number of things have happened that has resulted in me finding myself at the gaming table a lot more often. Number one, my brother got back into 40k after a long hiatus. Since we've been very close our entire lives, we make natural opponents. We've even got a custom campaign planned where his orcs invade my Space Marines' homeworld. That's awesome. A close friend for that. You're so lucky, man. You're so lucky to have somebody like that in your life who just plays all the time. My God. That'll be awesome. A close friend fulfilled his dream of opening his own local game shop, so I'm there a lot of the time to support the business, resulting in me playing games with him or customers on a semi-regular basis. Knowing that I'm not very experienced with the game, he'll always offer me tips and tricks for dealing with his army should I want them. So, games don't feel too one-sided. Lovely, brilliant. Man, you are living the life of Riley in terms of being in the hobby. Said shop hosts a monthly 40k tournament. Dude, we need to swap hobby lives. You come and run the channel for a bit, and I'll just hang out in your store and have lots of games to play. And my friend has asked me to fill in on occasion to make sure there are an even number of competitors in the tournament. Wanting to support my friend's business and having some level of interest in the game, I was, at least initially, more than happy to do this. My brother and I get along brilliantly, so our games aren't exactly sporting like with all the jabs and insults flying around. It's all said in good humour though, and every game ends with a handshake and a big hug. My friend who runs the shop is the model of good sportsmanship. To shorten the description, take a very good trait you've described in a good opponent in your past videos, and that's pretty much him. As for all the other people I've played against, they've all been polite and sportsmanlike during our games, and I've not got any complaints against any of them. So, you might be wondering, where's the problem? It's me. I'm the problem. Ooh, this took a turn. Okay. While I generally have minimal interest in the gaming side of the hobby, for some reason, as soon as the dice are in my hand, I become absolutely fixated on winning. And when things start to go badly, I get the most horrendous feeling of despair and immediately stop enjoying the game. Since I am the exact opposite of a metagamer, build my army lists on rule of cool, and seem to have the worst dice rolls on the planet, this tends to happen a lot. Dude, I feel your pain. I am exactly the same. You know, I build armies like somebody who doesn't care about winning, but I'm devastated when I end up losing, or I start losing, you know what I mean? My usual policy is to just put on a brave face and deal with it. The way I see it, even if I'm not having a good game, it's not my opponent's fault, and they deserve to have a good time, good lad. Besides, I don't want to become that guy who has a hissy fit every time a model of theirs is taken off the board. Very good, very good. Nevertheless, this came to a head just last week during a practice game against the shop owner's friend. He was playing Deathwatch, and I was playing my Marines. By the end of turn 2, most of my squads had been seriously reduced in numbers. I had barely been able to scratch his army, bad rolls strike again, and whilst I was somehow ahead on victory points, it was obvious that this would change very soon, as he was in a position to score a lot of primaries, by taking several of mine, without me being able to build up or put up much resistance. As always, he was the model of sportsmanship, lamenting my crappy rolls and all that. No complaints in that department. However, this time I was honest and said something on the lines of, "Look man, I'm not really enjoying this game. I feel completely outmatched and I can already see the writing on the wall. Maybe I'm just I'm in a shitty mindset today, but I don't know if we should continue this game much longer." He said that he understood completely and gave some pointers of what I could do in the game, but I could tell he was a bit taken aback by what I had said. Seems I've been good at hiding it until now. After turn 3, we had to end the game anyway due to other plans we had made together. Needless to say, I was very happy to get that drink at the local Wetherspoons. Now that I'm not at the gaming table, I don't care about the fact that I lose a lot. Indeed, I expect to lose most of my games. What I hate is my reaction to losing. Do you have any advice on how I can change my mindset in this regard, or otherwise deal with my frankly childish reaction to losing a game of toy soldiers? All the best and keep up the great work, William. Man, you are, without a doubt, a gentleman and a scholar. You know, it takes an incredible amount of mental strength to be able to stand back, examine your own behaviour and say, this shit ain't good enough. It takes it. I really cannot congratulate you enough for having the wherewithal to sit back and analyse yourself, check yourself, know what's going on. Brilliant stuff. As far as any advice goes, You've already done the first bit. You've done the hardest bit, and that's stepping back and realising that there's a problem. That's the hardest bit. Because it is really, really, really difficult to realise that you're the toxic one in this scenario. Doing that is 9/10 of the battle. You've done the hard bit. You've done the hard bit. Okay? The easy bit is just to try and... How do I put this? Because you're already doing it. Just remember, this is a game of toy soldiers. Nobody cares. Or, here's one thing that I like to do. So, the Astral Blades were created because I hate losing. And what do I mean by that? Well, the Astral Blades are essentially assassins and kidnappers, for want of a better word. They go in, they have a high priority target, they either take it out or they capture it in a Tesseract Vault or something, and they leave, right? Because they work for the Ordo Malleus, and they get them demons and enemy commanders and things like that to interrogate and stuff like that. So, at the start of the game, I mentally pinpoint one of my opponent's models, usually as Warlord, or could be a really big monster or whatever, and I say, the Astral Blades have to kill or capture that, right? As long as I do that, in my mind, I've won the game. I have literally played games where I completely ignore primaries and secondaries and don't play them at all. I'll count them up to make sure that my opponent doesn't feel like a mug, you know what I mean? But in my mind, I don't care about them. I'm going for this target and I'm going to get it down. And 9 times out of 10, I get it down because everything dies in Warhammer, right? I just don't play meta Warhammer. It's not what I do. So I made the game work for me. I said, okay, I'm not enjoying the meta list chasing nature of this hobby. It's not my kind of thing. I'm not enjoying trying to min-max the entire part of my army to try and make sure I stand a chance on the battlefield. I like telling stories. You know, I like telling stories on the tabletop. So what I did was I told a story on the tabletop. Every time. The Astral Blades are going for this guy right here. And if I don't get that guy, I failed in my mission. 9 times out of 10, I get my man, and then the rest of it is just a bonus. The rest of the game is just a bonus. If I win, it's a bonus. I don't care, right? So I would do that. Look into the background lore of your army, or make one up if you can do, right? Go into every single mission saying, okay, every single army, every single battle, and say, what is my objective in this battle? What am I here to do? Make it the same one for every single time you play. It is the easiest way to do it, like I've done. And it could be you're there to steal a relic from one of the enemy models. It could be that you're here to hold a certain position until turn 4 or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It could be anything like that. But as long as you've done that in your brain, you have succeeded in your objectives and you've won the battle, right? You don't need to tell your opponent this even. You can just have it in your head that that's what you're doing. And then maybe later on, explain to your opponent what you've done, especially if they ask, hey man, why did you not do this and why did you not do that? Then you can say, oh, this is what I do and this is how I enjoy the hobby, you know? I'm glad you had a good time because like I really had a good time in that one and this is how I do it. This is how I play my games. That's a fantastic way of doing it. That's what I would do. You know, create your own objectives, create your own fun. That way, you never lose. You never ever lose. Even if you lose. I don't know. Bit of advice there. Love you all long time. I will speak to you tomorrow, where we're going to be doing some Legion of the Damned lore. It is technically Sunday now, so Legion of the Damned lore will be on either Tuesday or Thursday. I'm going to try and race through my my lore going forwards. Love you all long time. I will speak to you tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of your day. See you later. Have a good one.